My name is Elias Monroe, and I never thought my own sister would betray me until she did. But what I found after she fired me was even worse than the betrayal. Let me take you back to the beginning. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Not exactly. Yes, my family owned one of the most prestigious hotel chains in the country, Monroe Lux Properties, but success in our family wasn't handed out. It was earned. At least, that's what I believed. When I was 17, while most of my classmates were partying or traveling for the summer, I was wearing a pressed uniform, hauling luggage, and saying, "Welcome to the Monroe Plaza," with a smile that didn't always reach my eyes. My father, Richard Monroe, insisted I start from the bottom. "You want to run an empire," he'd say, "then you need to know what it's like to sweep its floors." I listened. Every summer, every break I worked, bellhop, room service, concierge. Eventually, after college, I got my MBA and returned to the company full-time. By 30, I was managing 3 properties. By 35, I was vice president of operations, overseeing a dozen of our flagship hotels. I knew those buildings better than anyone. The linen orders, the maintenance schedules, the quirks in the fire systems, hell, I knew them better than I knew my own home. And through it all, I thought I was honoring my father's legacy. I thought I was earning my place. Then there was Celeste. My sister Celeste Monroe was 3 years younger than me, but somehow always one step ahead. While I was elbow-deep in spreadsheets and site visits, she was dazzling investors at charity galas, charming board members at exclusive dinners, appearing in glossy features about the future of luxury hospitality. She was brilliant. No, one could deny it. Her ideas were bold, sometimes too bold, but they worked. But she was also distant, always had been. As kids, she kept to herself. Where I sought praise, she demanded results. Where I played by the rules, she rewrote them. My father admired her ambition, but I don't think he ever trusted it. Still, we worked together, cordially, professionally, like 2 weather fronts destined to brush shoulders but never fully collide, until he died. When our father passed, the company needed a new leader. The board began reviewing succession plans. I assumed, naively, that my years of dedication, my loyalty, my sacrifice would matter. They didn't. 2 weeks after the funeral, the board convened a closed-door session. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need a seat to know what was coming. The tension had been building for months. Celeste had been making quiet moves, currying favor, reshuffling departments, whispering about modernization and bold new leadership. When the door opened, Celeste walked out wearing a calm, polished smile. She didn't look at me. Not until we reached the main conference room, where the rest of the executives were gathered. And then, on her very first day as president of Monroe Lux Properties, Celeste turned to me in front of the entire executive board and said, "Effective immediately, Elias, your services are no longer required. No warning, no private conversation, no thank you for your decades of service. Just a cold corporate execution in front of men and women I had worked alongside for years." I remember how silent the room went. You could hear the air conditioner hum. No one dared speak. No one dared meet my eyes. I was no longer Elias Monroe, vice president of operations. I was just another discarded employee. I packed my office in silence. I didn't cry, not then, but my hands shook. As I pulled books from my shelves, wrapped framed photos of site openings and family holidays, my mind spiraled. I thought of our parents, of their proud speeches and long hours. I thought of Celeste and I playing in the lobby as kids, pretending to check in guests with toy keys. I thought of the time I covered for her when she crashed Dad's car, the time I defended her when the board accused her of reckless spending. And I wondered, had she always hated me? Was this always her plan? I sat for a long while, staring out the window. 30 floors up, the city looked so small, distant, like none of it mattered. It was only when I opened the bottom drawer of my desk that I noticed something strange. Wedged behind the wooden panel, almost hidden in the narrow gap near the back, was a small silver flash drive. Thin, no brand label, just a piece of masking tape across the front with a warning scrawled in neat blue ink. Do not open. Legal archive. I almost put it back, but something about it, the placement, the handwriting nagged at me. This wasn't mine. I never stored anything important in that drawer, and I certainly hadn't labeled it like that. Celeste had taken over my office that morning to prepare her announcement. She must have used my desk, and she must have dropped the flash drive. Turned it over in my hand. It was warm. Maybe from her fingers, maybe from the sun through the window. I should have returned it, called her assistant. Walked away, but something stopped me. Anger, maybe. Curiosity, definitely. Injustice, absolutely. She had taken everything from me in one cold, calculated move. If there was something on this drive, something she didn't want anyone to see, I felt entitled to know. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes of my old office. The silence was heavy. I stared at the flash drive on my desk for what felt like hours. Do not open. That kind of label doesn't make you less curious. It makes you desperate. With a deep breath, I slid the flash drive into my laptop. The screen flickered. My cursor spun. A folder appeared, plain and unassuming. Legal Archive, Celeste. I clicked. Inside, dozens of documents, PDFs, encrypted reports, scanned NDAs, a folder marked Offshore Accounts, another marked Bribes 2019-2023, and buried halfway down the list, a video file. My heart pounded. Whatever this was, it wasn't just business strategy. This was something else, something darker. I reached for the mouse, my fingers trembled, and then slowly I clicked play. When I pressed play, I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a few boring legal documents or some internal memos. But what I saw changed everything. The video wasn't long, just under 2 minutes. Grainy security footage, time-stamped from 3 months ago. Celeste, sitting in a private conference room at our Midtown headquarters, across from a man I didn't recognize. He wore a sharp suit, his face mostly turned away from the camera. But the audio was clear. Celeste leaned forward, her tone clipped and confident. I've adjusted the financial reports. The board will approve the expansion, no questions asked. You'll receive your share through the Cayman Shell, the man responded, voice low and thick with a foreign accent. And the land transfer agreement? It's already in motion. Just make sure your people keep their mouths shut. If my brother sees the numbers, we have a problem. That line. If my brother sees the numbers. I paused the video. For a moment I just sat there, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat. I replayed it again, then again. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. She had fired me because I was too close, too loyal to the truth. And now I had proof. She was hiding something far more dangerous than a boardroom coup. I opened the rest of the folders. It was a rabbit hole. One document showed budget allocations that didn't match official reports. Millions rerouted through. Shell companies, one of them registered in Belize under a holding group I'd never heard of. Another file marked Confidential SEC Audit Risk contained forged consultant contracts, all signed off by Celeste, and then buried in a folder labeled Investor. Documents, I found it, a scanned agreement, signatures, legal jargon, and at the bottom, Investor, Khalid Ben Attar Entity, Aon Holdings. International flagged, financial fraud, money laundering, Interpol, 2019. I knew that name. Years ago, he was in the headlines, suspected of funding corrupt real estate developments across Southeast Asia. He disappeared before authorities could build a case, and now he was connected to my family's company. I needed answers, but I couldn't go to HR. I couldn't trust the board. So I went to someone I hadn't seen in years, Victor Langston. Victor had been our head of compliance until he suddenly resigned 2 years ago. No reason given, no farewell emails, just gone. We'd never been particularly close, but I remembered. His eyes, sharp, observant, always watching. The kind of man who knew when something was wrong long before anyone else did. He agreed to meet. Quiet cafe, West Village, far from the city's high-rise shadows. Victor looked older, thinner, but when I mentioned the flash drive, he didn't look surprised. He just sighed. "I knew it would come out eventually," he said, stirring his coffee. "Your sister, she's been making moves for a long time. Most of us saw it. You were just too busy defending her. I felt the sting of that." He wasn't wrong. Growing up, I had always protected Celeste. Our father, Richard Monroe, was a titan in business, but a tyrant at home, demanding, cold, and especially hard on Celeste. She was different from me, more creative, more independent. That threatened him. I remembered the night she came home crying because Dad threatened to cut her off for suggesting a tech overhaul he didn't approve. I confronted him, told him if he disinherited her, I'd walk too. He backed off. But from then on, I became her shield. Maybe that was my mistake. She didn't just outmaneuver you, Elias, Victor continued. She used you as cover. You had the trust, the loyalty, while she ran the other game behind the curtain. My stomach twisted. I asked him about the investor, Khalid Ben Attar. Victor nodded grimly. I flagged that deal when she first pitched. The numbers didn't line up. Too many shell entities, too much secrecy. I brought it to the board. And, I asked, they told me to leave it alone. 2 weeks later, I got an offer to resign quietly. With a 6-figure severance and an ironclad NDA, I took it. I needed the money. I leaned in. Victor, there's more. Celeste mentioned me by name in that video. She knew I was a threat. He nodded again. Slower this time. Of course she did. You're the only one she couldn't control. I left the cafe with more questions than answers. Back home, I started piecing together everything I'd seen. I printed documents, made copies, set up encrypted backups. I didn't know what I was building, but it was growing into something damning. Then the warning came. I visited board member Franklin Dorr, an old friend of our father's, trusted, conservative, loyal to the company's legacy. Thought if anyone would care about what Celeste was doing, it would be him, but when I laid out the documents in his private study, he didn't even glance at them. Instead, he poured himself a scotch, walked to the window and said, "You don't understand what you're poking, Elias. This isn't just family business anymore. It's international money, private security firms, lawyers who make people disappear." I froze. He turned to face me, eyes heavy with something that almost looked like pity. "Stay out of this, Elias. It's bigger than you." Then he walked me to the door. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept the lights on, laptop open, the flash. Drive sat next to me like a loaded weapon. The next morning, my front door was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it open. Inside, drawers were rifled through. My home office, shredded. Files gone. USB backups missing. Nothing else stolen. No forced entry. They weren't after valuables. They were after proof. That's when I knew this wasn't just corporate betrayal. This was criminal. Celeste hadn't just fired me. She'd tried to erase me. I checked the drive again. Thank God I'd hidden a backup copy in a cloud vault. But as I reopened the files to double-check them, something new caught my eye. A second folder. I hadn't seen it before. Hidden behind a string of characters and date stamps, it was labeled, "For Elias, if anything happens to me." My breath caught. I clicked. The file was a video, time-stamped 6 months ago. My hands shook as I double-clicked. The screen flickered to life. There she was, Celeste, sitting alone in what looked like our father's old office. No makeup, her eyes red and swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. I could barely recognize her. She looked straight into the camera. "Elias, if you're seeing this, something's gone wrong." She paused, swallowing hard. "I know you're angry. I know you probably hate me right now, but please listen to what I have to say before you do anything." She leaned forward, elbows on the desk, voice cracking as she continued. "Do you remember the summer before Dad died? When he took that sudden trip to Zurich, you thought it was for the merger. It wasn't." She reached down and pulled out a file, held it up to the camera. "I found out what he was really doing. Dad wasn't just building a hotel empire. He was laundering money through it. Millions, some from investors we knew, some from places we didn't want to know." The words hit like a truck. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. "When he died," she said, "I found everything. Accounts, transfer records, names. I wanted to come to you, but I knew what it would do to you, to both of us. You believed in him so much, in the Monroe name, in legacy." She looked away for a second, then back. "I didn't want the company to go down, so I tried to fix it from the inside. Quietly, I cut off the worst accounts. I restructured deals. But I had to cover my tracks, make it look like everything was fine." Her voice dropped. "Then the board started pushing back, asking questions. I panicked. They were going to come after you, Elias. You were too clean, too honest. If they dragged you into it, you'd be ruined. The only way to protect you was to make you look irrelevant." She covered her mouth for a moment, fighting tears. "That's why I fired you." Silence. I know it was cruel. I know how much it hurt. But I needed you out before they made you the fall guy." She reached out like she wanted to touch the camera. "I'm sorry, Eli. I didn't know how else to save you." The screen went black. I stared at the monitor, heart pounding. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But more than anything, I wanted to find her. Because now, she was gone. No one at the office had seen her in days. Her apartment, empty, phone off, no digital trail. It was like she'd vanished, but I knew her better than anyone. If Celeste was on the run, there'd be one place she'd go. I drove through the night. Upstate, our family's old lake house, abandoned since the funeral. Cold, creaky, still smelling, faintly of cedar and ghosts. I stepped inside, and there she was by the window, silhouetted against the glass. She turned slowly, eyes wide, a mixture of relief and fear on her face. "Elias." I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, staring at her. Everything in me wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. I saw the little girl again, the one I used to defend at the dinner table, the one who'd sneak candy into my backpack, the one who used to call me Eli Bear when no one was looking. She stepped forward, cautious. "I didn't want you to see the video yet," she whispered. "Not until I was long gone." "You were going to disappear?" I asked, my voice low. She nodded. "I was going to take the fall, quietly. Fake documents, vanish. Better that than watching you get destroyed because of what Dad did." I laughed, bitterly. "You thought I couldn't handle the truth?" "No," she said. "I thought you'd try to save me, even if it meant sacrificing yourself." We stood there for a long time. Then the tears came. For both of us. We cried, deep, shaking sobs from years of silence and secrets, of trying to carry the weight of our father's sins, of choosing loyalty over honesty, of being children forced into the roles of protectors. When the tears were gone, only the truth remained. "I'm going to the press," I said. Celeste's eyes widened. "What? I'm not hiding this. Not anymore. You'll be ruined." "Maybe," I said. "But maybe that's the only way to free us." She didn't argue, she just nodded. The press conference was held 3 days later. Dozens of reporters, flashbulbs, microphones. I stood behind the podium, a folder in hand, a storm in my chest. "I'm Elias Monroe," I began, "and today I want to tell you the truth." I told them everything, our father's secrets, the money laundering, the falsified deals, the offshore investors, the corruption that had been rotting our family empire from the inside out. I spared no one, including myself. I confessed my silence, my ignorance, my complicity, and then I did what my father never could. I took responsibility. I resigned from the board. Publicly, permanently. I will not let legacy be an excuse for silence, I said, voice firm. If the Monroe name means anything, let it mean truth, even if it costs us everything. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but I was already walking away. That was 6 weeks ago. The fallout was brutal. Stock plummeted. Investigations launched. Investors fled. The board scrambled to contain the damage. Celeste stayed hidden, cooperating with federal investigators from afar. She'd made her peace with the consequences. As for me, I'm jobless, disgraced, but free. No more titles, no more fake smiles. In boardrooms, no more pretending. I walk by the hotel now and feel nothing. Not pride, not regret, just peace. Because for the first time in my life, I chose truth over family secrets, and that, finally, set me free.